"You should have died tonight." Those were the first words that came out of my twin sister's mouth before her knees buckled and she collapsed into my arms. I caught her just before she hit the floor. But the moment I felt how badly she was trembling, something inside me snapped so hard I swear I heard it. Her face didn't look like my face anymore. One eye was swollen shut, the skin around it already bruising into deep purple black. Her lip was split and caked with dried blood. And the worst, God. The worst was the pattern of dark fingerprints circling her throat like a necklace made of violence. Evidence of exactly where a man's hands had been, exactly how hard he had squeezed. My identical twin, my other half. And someone had tried to choke the life out of her. I thought I was prepared for anything. But when she whispered, "Harper, he almost killed me," my whole body went cold enough to sting. I pulled her inside my apartment and shut the door so fast the frame rattled. She could barely breathe. Her breaths short and broken, like glass under pressure. I guided her to the couch and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Even then, she flinched at the slightest touch. That's when I knew. This wasn't the first time Brandon had hurt her. It wasn't even the second or the fifth. This was years of fear compacted into one midnight collapse. Before I go any further, thank you for being here with me through this opening moment. If anything, in these first few seconds touches something familiar or heavy in your own life, your gentle support through a like, a comment, a share, or even a quiet subscribe truly means a lot to me. I'm grateful you're listening. Clara and I were born identical, same height, same face, same voice, but the world treated us differently. I was the loud one growing up. The fighter. The girl who punched a classmate in 8th grade for pulling Clara's hair. Clara was the soft one. The empath. The kindergarten teacher who believed people were good even when they weren't. Her marriage to Brandon Morrison looked like a fairy tale from the outside. Handsome. Charming. Wealthy. Polite. But I saw something in his eyes from the beginning. Something possessive. Something that measured her instead of loving her. I told Clara once, gently, that something felt wrong about him. We didn't speak for weeks after that. She drifted away from me slowly, like a boat being pulled out by the tide. Fever visits, shorter phone calls, then excuses, renovating the house, work events, not feeling well, but the real reason was always Brandon. Brandon, controlling. Brandon, watching. Brandon deciding who she was allowed to be. 6 months ago. She winced when I hugged her. 3 months ago. She flinched when I reached for her arm. I knew. I knew something was happening. I just didn't know how bad it had gotten until she stood in my doorway at midnight, looking like death had almost taken her but missed. I held the ice pack against her cheek. My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed steady for her. "Clara, tell me what he did." It took almost an hour for the words to come out in pieces. Words about yelling, rules, tracking, forced apologies. Words about slapping and pushing and shaking. And then, finally, the worst words of all, when he wrapped his hands around my throat. I thought it was over. I listened. I let her cry. I let her collapse against me. But there was one thing I didn't let myself feel. Fear. Because fear wouldn't save her. But I would. Clara slept on my couch for nearly 12 hours. Her body so exhausted it looked like sleep was the only thing keeping her alive. I didn't move from the chair beside her. I just sat there watching her chest rise and fall, terrified that if I blinked too long, I'd lose her. When she finally woke up, sunlight filtered through the blinds, turning the bruises on her face into something even more horrifying. She tried to sit up, winced, and I rushed to help her. Harper, she whispered. I'm sorry for what I asked. For this, for everything. Her apology broke something in me. She wasn't the one who should be apologizing. She was the one who had survived. She wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold her own shaking ribs together. It didn't start like this, she said quietly. It wasn't always bad. I didn't interrupt. Survivors always start that way. They feel like they have to justify the moments before the nightmare. The first year, he was perfect, she said, thoughtful, attentive, caring. If something upset me, he fixed it. If someone hurt me, he defended me. He made me feel safe. That word safe sat like a stone between us. But then, Clara continued. It all changed. Slowly. So slowly I didn't realize what was happening. First, it was little comments about what I wore, who I talked to, how I spent my time. She stared down at her hands, picking at a fraying thread in the blanket. Then he started going through my phone. Not in an angry way, just checking, just being careful. He said, just making sure you're okay. He made it sound like love, like protection. I clenched my jaw. I had seen this pattern before in clients at my gym. In stories whispered in locker rooms. In the quiet voices of women who came to my self-defense classes with too many excuses for their bruises. Clara kept talking. He convinced me to quit my job. Said he made enough for both of us. That I deserved rest. That teaching drained me too much. You loved teaching. I reminded her. She nodded. Eyes watering. I did. But he said it was for my own good. And when I hesitated, he made me feel guilty for not trusting him. So I stayed home. And then he didn't want me seeing friends. Then he didn't want me seeing you. My throat tightened. He told me you were trying to poison me against him. That you hated him. That you were jealous. I inhaled sharply. The cruelty wasn't just violence. It was isolation. Harper, there were days I didn't speak to anyone but him. She described the rules. The strict schedules. The monitoring apps she wasn't allowed to delete. The punishments for small mistakes, burning dinner. Answering too slowly. Being too emotional. He always apologized afterward. She whispered. Always blamed stress. Or work. Or me. He brought flowers. Gifts. He cried once. I thought maybe he was trying. Her voice cracked. But last night, that wasn't anger. That wasn't a mistake. He looked at me like he wanted me gone. Like I wasn't a person. Like I was just something he could break. She stopped talking then. Her eyes drifted to the window. Unfocused. Haunted. I reached for her hand. You're not going back there. She didn't respond. I squeezed gently. You hear me, you're not going back. This time she looked at me. Fear wrapped tight around her expression. Harper, she whispered. He said, if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure nobody ever found me. I'd heard enough. The rage inside me was no longer quiet. It was a living, breathing thing with sharp teeth. But I didn't show it not to her. I just nodded. Calm and steady. Then we're going to make sure he never gets the chance. The Summer Ridge block party was one of those events everyone attended, kids running around with popsicles, parents gossiping near food trucks, couples slow dancing under string lights hung between lampposts. It was warm, noisy, familiar, the kind of place Clara used to love, the kind of place she hadn't been allowed to visit for 2 years. I didn't plan on going. But Brandon texted the group chat, we'll be there. and every hair on my body stood up. We. He was expecting Clara, which meant he was expecting me. So that evening, dressed like her, hair styled like hers, mannerisms crafted from 2 days of training, I walked into the crowd pretending to be my twin sister, while Brandon trailed half a step behind me like a warden guarding an inmate. Every time he touched the small of my back, guiding me where he wanted me to stand, I had to stop myself from breaking his fingers. He greeted neighbors like nothing was wrong, smiling, charming, telling stories about his projects. People laughed, complimented him, called Clara lucky, told her she glowed. I nodded, soft and awkward the way Clara would. But inside, rage burned like a rising fever. I finally understood why Clara had been trapped so long. It wasn't just fear. It was reputation, power. Brandon had built himself into a man everyone respected, a man everyone liked, the kind of man who could walk into a public space and everyone would assume he was the victim if anything ever went wrong. At one point, Mrs. Thompson, a woman who'd known us since childhood, pulled me aside. "Clara, honey," she whispered. "You look tired. Is everything okay at home?" Before I could answer, Brandon stepped up behind me, hand lightly gripping my shoulder. "She's fine," he said smoothly. "A little overwhelmed. I've been taking care of her." I felt my stomach twist. His fingers tightened just enough for me to feel the warning in them. Say nothing. Agree. Obey. The fact that he could do it in public, in broad daylight, surrounded by people, without anyone noticing, that was the part that made my jaw clench. Later, when he went to get a drink, I slipped into a quieter area behind the bandstand. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from the pressure of holding myself back. I leaned against the fence, trying to slow my breathing. Then I heard it. Someone from a small group nearby whispered, "Clara seems off lately, but you know how emotional women get." Brandon's been a saint putting up with it. A saint. A man who nearly strangled my sister was considered a saint. The world spun for a moment. I gripped the fence to steady myself. This wasn't just private abuse. This was a system built to protect him, to hide him, to erase Clara. When Brandon returned, placing a hand on my waist as if claiming property, I forced myself to shrink, not out of fear, but out of strategy. He smirked. Satisfied. He had no idea. No idea that Clara wasn't the one standing beside him. No idea that the woman under his control now was someone who'd trained half the town in self-defense. Someone who didn't break, didn't bend, didn't bow. He didn't know that every second I stood beside him, I was listening, studying, memorizing, gathering information, building a case, preparing to destroy him piece by piece. The night ended with him gripping my arm a little too tightly as we walked back to the car, punishment for something I didn't even know I did wrong. But I stayed silent, because I knew something he didn't. He had just walked into his own trap, and I was the one tightening it. The first morning I woke up in Clara's place beside Brandon, I understood instantly how she'd been crushed without anyone hearing a sound. Every breath had rules. I woke up at 6:00 because Clara always woke up at 6:00. I walked softly because Clara always walked softly. I poured his coffee exactly how Clara described, 2 sugars. Cream warmed for 20 seconds. Stirred clockwise, not counterclockwise. Brandon didn't thank me. He just took the mug, sipped, and said, "Finally." I kept my eyes down. Clara's posture, Clara's tone, Clara's quietness, it all had to be perfect. Because one wrong move meant suspicion, and suspicion meant danger. For the next several days, I lived her life. The life she survived. The life she endured. And I understood in a way I never had this wasn't a marriage. It was captivity wearing a wedding ring. Brandon never left me alone. If he was home, his eyes were on me, where I stood, how I breathed, what I touched, how long I took to respond. Every single action had meaning in his mind. But what he didn't know was this: I was collecting everything. The camera pen Clara had never been able to use, I used it every day. I recorded him yelling. I recorded him calling me names. I recorded him accusing me of cheating because I looked out the window too long. I recorded him grabbing my wrist so hard my bones ached. I recorded everything. I explored the house while he was away, finding the locked drawer Clara told me about. He'd hidden the key inside a hollowed-out book on the office shelf. Inside that drawer, I found a folder with Clara's name scrawled on the front. GPS logs, screenshots, records of her calls, notes about what she wore and how long she spent grocery shopping. He'd turned my sister into a project he managed. Some pages were worse handwritten accusations about her mental health, clearly meant for blackmail if she ever tried to leave. I photographed it all, and every night, when he checked Clara's phone, he found nothing because I deleted every trace of communication with Clara and our advocate, Helen. Even fear couldn't override my discipline. But the hardest part wasn't the danger. It was seeing the life Clara had been forced into. Her wardrobe shoved into a tiny corner of the closet. Her makeup hidden in drawers. Her shoes lined up exactly 2 inches apart because he demanded it. A calendar with his initials written over most days: B equals needs me home. F equals family events she must attend. She didn't have a life. She had a schedule. The more I saw, the angrier I became. Not loud anger, quiet anger. Controlled. Focused. Precision, sharp. The kind that plans revolutions. One evening, while Brandon showered, I stepped into the hallway and whispered into the camera pen, "You're going to prison." And for the first time in days, I smiled. Before I continue with what happened next, I want to genuinely thank you for walking with me through this difficult part of my sister's story. If my determination or Clara's courage means something to you, your gentle support, through a like, a comment, a share, or a quiet subscribe truly means a lot to me. Thank you for being here. Living in that house felt like living inside a wolf's den while pretending to be a sheep. The air was heavy in every room, like the walls themselves had learned to hold their breath. Brandon's presence filled the space even when he wasn't physically there. His rules, his routines, his silent expectations etched into every corner. But there was one advantage he didn't know I had: I wasn't Clara. And that meant I wasn't afraid of him. I learned quickly that Brandon's moods had patterns. He was most volatile right after coming home from work, most suspicious late at night, most arrogant on weekends, most careless when he thought Clara was emotionally beaten down. So I used that. I didn't provoke him, not recklessly, but I created opportunities. Small ones. I left a cabinet door slightly ajar. I paused 2 seconds too long when he called my name. I sat on the couch before he told me I could sit. Each one was a button he couldn't resist pressing. "You're getting sloppy," he snapped one evening, slamming his briefcase onto the table. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing you are?" I lowered my gaze. "I'm sorry." The words tasted like rust, but I forced them out. He needed to think I was folding. He grabbed my chin, forcing it upward. "Look at me when you apologize." I did, and I recorded the whole thing. The camera pen hidden in my hair caught his face, twisted with contempt, his hand gripping my jaw, his voice cracking with rage. Evidence. The next day, I found the household security system console. Brandon monitored everything from his phone, but Clara had taught me the blind spots, the corners, the cameras didn't quite reach. I used those angles to document the bruises forming on my arms from where he grabbed me. More evidence. But the moment that changed everything came 3 nights later. Brandon had been drinking again. Not stumbling, but mean. The type of drunk who looked for a throat to sink his teeth into. He walked into the kitchen where I was chopping vegetables for dinner. The knife steady in my hand despite the tension ringing through me. "I saw you talking to the mailman today," he said. I didn't even remember the interaction. The man had said, "Good morning." That was all. "Yes," I said softly. He greeted me. "That's not what I asked." His voice grew sharp. "Why were you smiling at him? I hadn't been—" Clara would have apologized. So I apologized too. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean slap." The hit came fast. The force whipping my head sideways, my cheek exploding with heat. For a moment, the world blurred. He had crossed the line Clara feared most hitting the face. Her face. My face. But I wasn't Clara. I slowly turned back to him. Just like I had trained 100 students to do. Calm. Cold. Controlled. Inside. Adrenaline surged. But outside. I made my voice tremble like Clara's. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Please, don't be mad." Brandon exhaled through his nose. Satisfied. Smug. "It's your fault for acting like a whore." The recording device clipped under my collar caught every word, every syllable. I clutched the counter not because I needed support, but because, if I didn't, I might have launched myself at him and ended everything too soon. Instead, I let him walk away believing he'd won. Because now I had something no lawyer of his could spin away. Physical violence. On camera, along with his own justification for it. That night, when he checked my phone, deleting messages he didn't want me to have. He didn't know the memory card in my necklace held the kind of evidence that destroys men like him. I lay in Clara's bed, staring at the ceiling. Cheek throbbing. Heart pounding not from fear, but from anticipation. We were close. Closer than Brandon could ever imagine. The night everything finally snapped didn't feel like a climax. It felt quiet. Too quiet. Like the air itself was holding its breath. Brandon came home later than usual. His footsteps heavy and uneven. I smelled the alcohol before I saw him. He tossed his keys onto the counter, missing the bowl completely. They clattered onto the floor. He didn't bother picking them up. This was it. I could feel it. I'd been pushing him gently for days, small mistakes. Subtle defiance. Enough to chip away at the mask he wore in public. Enough to expose the monster underneath. Everything was ready. The camera pen was charged. The recording device in my necklace already running. Documents photographed. Hard evidence archived and backed up in 3 separate locations. Now all I needed was the confession. He walked toward me with a slow, deliberate stride. A predator approaching prey that couldn't possibly escape. "Dinner isn't ready," he said. Voice calm but sharp at the edges. "It's almost done," I answered softly. He stood too close. Close enough that I could feel the heat of his breath. Close enough that Clara would have shrunk away. I didn't. His eyes narrowed. "You're acting strange lately." I swallowed. "Just tired." "No." He tilted his head. "You're different." My pulse quickened. But I forced my voice to shake. Just like Clara taught me. I don't understand." "You think I don't notice?" His voice rose. "You think I don't see everything you do?" Here it was. The opening. I'm trying, I whispered. I don't want to make you angry. Liar. The word came out like a spit. He grabbed my wrist hard, harder than before. His grip dug straight into the bruises already forming there. Who have you been talking to? He growled. What are you hiding? No one. He yanked me closer. Tell me. Clara. And then, without warning, he slapped me again, harder than before. My head whipped to the side, the room tilting for a second. Pain blossomed across my cheek like fire. I tasted blood, but I didn't break. I turned back to him, slowly, eyes watering just enough to stay in character, voice shaking just enough to keep him convinced. Please, I whispered. I'll do better. His fingers tightened on my throat, not fully squeezing yet. Testing, probing for fear. You don't get to disobey me, he hissed. You belong to me. Say it. My pulse thundered, but my voice stayed small. I belong to you. And if you ever leave me, his grip tightened. I swear to God. Clara, I will make sure no one ever finds you. There it was. The exact confession I needed. Not shouted. Not coerced. Freely spoken. I tapped the hidden switch on the necklace chain. The living room lights flashed once. A signal. The front door burst open so violently the frame rattled. Police, don't move, Brandon froze. Hand still on my throat. Officers swarmed him 3. Then 5. Then more. They pulled him off me. Slammed him to the ground. Cuffed his wrists behind his back while he thrashed and screamed. You set me up, he shouted at me. You crazy, where is my wife? Where is she? I stepped back, rubbing my throat, breathing hard. One officer held the recorder up. We have your threats. Mr. Morrison, we have your confession. And we have medical reports from your wife. Brandon's face twisted in pure panic. You think this will stick? You think a DA will believe this? I'll get out. No, I said softly, finally letting my own voice come through. You won't. His eyes widened as he finally realized who I was. Wrong twin. I reminded him. They dragged him out of the house, screaming. And for the first time in years, the walls of that place felt warm again. Not because the nightmare was over, but because justice had finally stepped through the door. The world felt strangely still after Brandon's arrest. As if the noise and chaos that had ruled the past weeks had suddenly dropped away. The house Clara's prison was now a crime scene. Officers gathered evidence from every room, while Helen, the advocate, walked me outside and asked how I was breathing. I wasn't sure. My cheek still burned where Brandon had struck me. My throat was tender, my arms bruised, but inside, somewhere deeper, something had shifted into a kind of calm I hadn't felt in years. It was finally over. 2 hours later, I was driving to Aunt Patricia's house. The whole ride. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from fear anymore, but from the release of holding everything together for so long. When I pulled into the driveway, Clara burst through the front door before I even opened the car door. She ran toward me, tears already streaming. You're okay, she cried, gripping my arms like she needed proof. Harper, you're okay. I hugged her tightly. So are you. For the first time in months. She didn't flinch when someone touched her. She held on to me like she was anchoring herself back to the world. Inside, Aunt Patricia placed 2 mugs of hot tea in front of us and insisted we stay the night. Clara curled up on the couch beside me, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like our childhood home. Her breathing was steady for the first time since that midnight knock on my door. The next morning, the district attorney called. Brandon was being charged with multiple felonies, domestic violence, unlawful imprisonment, stalking, terroristic threats. His lawyers screamed coercion and entrapment, but the recordings were clear. His threats undeniable. The evidence I gathered was airtight. Clara cried again, not from fear, but from the weight of being believed. Over the next few weeks, she began healing in ways I hadn't expected. She signed up for counseling. She returned to teaching. She laughed soft at first, then louder. Freer. She told her story to the Advocate Center, helping other women recognize the signs she had once ignored. She stopped shrinking into herself. She became Clara again. And me, I helped her move into a small apartment near my own. I taught her self-defense. I walked her to the grocery store the first time she went alone. I stayed with her during court hearings. And slowly, I let myself rest too. One afternoon, we sat on the balcony of her new place, watching the sun dip behind the mountains. Clara turned to me and whispered, "You saved my life." I shook my head. "You saved your own. You came to me. You asked for help. That took more courage than anything I did." She smiled faintly, then took my hand. We saved each other. There were still hard days. Nights when she woke from nightmares, moments when I remembered the sound of Brandon's voice and felt my muscles tense. But those moments passed. And each day, the world grew a little lighter. One evening, months later, Clara said something I will never forget. "Harper, I didn't recognize myself for a long time. But now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone who survived." I squeezed her hand gently. "You're not just a survivor. You're free." And I meant it. Thank you for staying with me through this entire story. If any part of our journey, our fear, our fight, our healing resonates with your own life, your gentle support through a like, a comment, a share, or even a quiet subscribe truly means more than I can express. I'm grateful you were here with us.